Hello, YouTube. How are you this fine day? I'm doing quite well. I finally got a little time to do a little bit of recording, and I was really planning on doing a strength build with all sorts of weapons, and I ended up mostly using the greatsword, the colossal greatsword, and of course I can't help myself, but I also use a fair bit of great bows. But I wanted to ask you, do you like big swords? What kind of big swords do you like? Normally, I'm a fan of pseudo-medieval realism, you know, practical swords, not some wide paddles or terribly ornate fantasy eyesores. I like what looks real, what looks practical. But every now and then, I think it is a good idea to let out that little... let out your inner 13-year-old boy who thinks big swords are the coolest thing ever. Because you know what? That inner 13-year-old boy's right. Big swords are cool. Just suspend your disbelief just a smidgen, and you too can have a grand old time with a big sword. Now, I'll be honest with you, dear viewer, I'm not too good with the big sword. It's gonna take a lot more practice. For one, I need to practice the crouch poke, learning when to predict for roll catches and things like that. It's a very strong part of the weapon, and it's something I need to get down pat if I'm ever going to be great with it. But it's still fun to be able to hit people and to make trades and to have the big damage numbers. Because sometimes if people just don't dodge, the fight's over terribly quickly when you have that big of a damage number. But would you like to know what's more satisfying to me than landing crouch pokes in sequence? Though that is a skill expression that is very important to the utilization of the ultra great swords. I like landing Ashes of War. I'm not very good at it. It's kind of hard. It's slow. It's telegraphed. But if you can do it right, some great things can happen, like jumping into the fray of a party. One phantom jumps off the cliff. You decide to throw the host in the air. The wizard can't help but mash the cast button, so you take care of him. He's stuck in that animation. Doesn't matter how much latency he has, he can't dodge. And you get to throw the host in the air one more time. It just feels good. I wanted to kill this guy with a lion's claw, but the crouch came in and ended the invasion earlier than I would have liked. But that's okay, we turned it around in a flash. And those are the clips that I like the most. They're the most exciting to me. So I would like to hear about what sort of big swords you like, even if they're just the regular greatsword class weapon. They don't have to be the colossal or the ultra or whatever you call it nowadays. What sort of big swords do you like? What Ashes of War do you run on? I was thinking about running Eruption on the colossal sword, and I didn't get a clip of it. I haven't attempted to get a clip of it, I should say, to be more accurate. But I've enjoyed Eruption in the past, so what other things come to your mind? What's good? What's just fun? What's stylish? What do people not expect? Leave it all down below. Because I'm always looking for more ideas. I want to start a journey to mastering the Ultra Greatsword. To get those pokes down pat. To get the predictions just right. To be able to do the big damage. To do the big front flips. All of those nice and tasty things. And of course, if there is a fallback on a build like this, it's that if they are incredibly latent, oh my goodness, is it hard to kill them. That's just a natural consequence of a slower weapon. Faster weapon's a better idea if you can. Stats effect even more so. And some of you probably looked at the stats at the start of the video and went, that's not optimized for the Colossal Greatsword. Yeah, you're right. I had too much dex. I had like 20 points of dexterity for wielding other weapons, namely the Anspur Rapier. I didn't need to use it, thankfully. But it was there. I had it. I'll admit. It's a crutch. A very useful crutch at that. So if you just wanted to run a build with pure Ultra Greatsword, you can take quite a few points out of that. I know as a Vagabond, I think you could lower to 13? Sounds about right. I think 13 dex is enough to wield the Colossal Greatswords. At least the Greatsword. Maybe not this Zweihander. I don't remember the stats for it, but I know it takes 19 strength. That's what the brain remembers. You know what else is a great Ash of War for the Colossal Greatsword? Going on a tangent that's a little more on point. Waves of Darkness. Waves of Darkness performs very well if you are an int build with enough strength to put it on a bigger weapon like the Zweihander. It works fairly well if you're a hybrid build using a Cold Infusion, and if you're just a pure martial build, a Cold Infusion will do very nicely for the Ash of War. I think it performs a little better than the Heavy Infusion on a martial build. I haven't tested it, so if anybody has a correction for me, that would be Very much appreciated, but I believe the cold infusion's a tad better. And hey, it's nice to have access to the cold Colossal Greatsword, because it does a fair bit of status build-up. You can usually build it up in 2 or 3 hits if you get them quick enough. And that's, being able to hit people with cold makes them more vulnerable. If you can make the swap to a regular infusion, martial, physical infusion, you can make use of that bonus damage. It's very nice. Here's another little tangent for you. I've been playing Sekiro recently. I got to it late. I know I got the game a little bit ago, but I've been finally putting in some hours, and I'm horrible at that game. Absolutely atrocious. It kind of kicked me in the rear end and let me know I wasn't hot stuff. I wasn't good at anything. I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to defeat a boss that's fairly early in the game to my understanding. Probably the end boss of what you might call Act 1, I don't know. And it took me hours in a row, and I shouldn't have played for hours in a row. I should have taken a break and come back to it. That's usually when you do better at those sorts of games and those sorts of bosses. But I didn't. I was stubborn, and I eventually did it, and I felt age for the first time. I felt like my reaction times weren't sufficient. That maybe, just maybe, the process of getting older has just begun in its own terrifying, existential sort of way. I'm still upset that that little sword swipe there didn't clip this guy, because he was, oh my gosh, he did a lot of damage with that Rivers of Blood. It felt like pre-patch or pre-nerf Rivers of Blood. And I wasn't certain what to do about it. I started playing more cautious. I realized he was in the 200 or so ping category. Maybe it was more like 170, but still. Making those hits, you gotta work on their hubris. You gotta take them down with their hubris. And look at my money acquisition. He dropped almost as much money as I was carrying. I'm pretty certain if you get 355k, that's a max level player, but 300k is still up there. That's still an inordinately high level person, and that's probably why his bleeds worked so well. I imagine he's playing with his friend. His friend likes to do the PvP. He's got a good setup. For some reason, he wants to do duels here, which is fine. They're being honorable about it. Nothing shameful about it. I kind of miss Academy duels every now and then. Always wondering if you're going to have some smarmy person show up and do something less than honorable. You know, that's what the arena's for. It's for the people who absolutely want a controlled environment. But sometimes I miss the, you know, the fight clubs. They feel like they don't happen nearly as often anymore, especially compared to, say, the Dark Souls 3 days. But I've done it before. I've brought a friend with me to do honorable duels with an audience. It's kind of your next best option, if that's what you're looking for. Oh, another question that I had, just for the ether, just for you audience members at home. Is there a level bracket for PvP with colossal weapons, or more specifically colossal greatswords, that you found worked best? Meta level, of course, you have all the stats to have big armor, big damage, and, you know, all the fixins, all the dressings of this RPG potato bar we have going on here. But is there another bracket that you really liked it? I've seen people use Ultra Greatswords as low and as comfortably as level 40, though you're really just hitting the bare minimum with those weapons. I think I saw a build a little while ago that somebody was using Blythe's Royal Greatsword, which is a Colossal Greatsword, at like level 40 plus 3 or something like that. And that just felt like such a low level, but it worked well enough, so I'm curious what other brackets the weapon might be handy-dandy in. I know I've used a little bit at 80 and 90, but that's about it. I kinda stray away from the Colossal because it feels like, at least at the very low levels, that your damage is only slightly better than a straight sword, but a lot slower. So is it really worth your time? Maybe not, but it was simply a question I had occur to me. Look at that shot. Oh, I love that. There's nothing better than a rain of arrows with a quick follow-up shot just to clean up the kill. Oh, it feels so good. But moving forward, we're going to get a little more greatsword action, and I feel like I've been jumping back and forth. The great bow is just so phenomenal at shoring up what I would call the weaknesses of an ultra greatsword in some capacity, because you can soften up your enemies, you can make them angry, you got range, it's fairly quick despite how big and cumbersome the weapon looks like it should need and ought to be. And then once they're all angry and softened up, lower on resources, you can really capitalize on that hubris, and look at that. Oh, so clean. I usually don't get the clean kills, so it's always nice when I happen to get them for once. And because I can't help myself, you see what's going on. You know what's going on. You see those weird jittering slugs in the corner of my screen just doing whatever as I get a triple kill. Oh, those poor people. I felt so bad for them. It was an interesting moment where I saw them for a brief moment down below in the rotten swamp of the sunken castle, whatever it's called. And I was like, oh, I could fight them with the Uggs and have this interesting 3v1. And then the little shoulder devil was like, use the great bow, get up the ladder. They have to go that way to progress. And I unfortunately succumbed to that temptation. But we have these fellows here running the albinuric mask. I was flickering it just a moment ago just to say, hey, I see your mask. I see what you're doing. And he pulled out the spyglass, which was a very Steelovsky thing to do, but they can't be waiting for Steelovsky no more. He's moved to PlayStation. He's enjoying better ping and apparently greener pastures. I had no idea. Either way, I'm enjoying this colossal greatsword fight. A little bit of latency between us. I think these fellows were Polish. It was some sort of Slavic language that was their Steam usernames. I could be completely wrong, of course. Or they could just be LARPing, I don't know. Poor guy. He goes for the charged L2, but he starts it facing away, which means backstab. And when you have so little HP, dagger cleanup. That's another thing. If you're going to run a colossal sword, I know it's heavy, I know it's hard to make room for, especially when you want the biggest damage imaginable. Think about putting a knife in your offhand. It's 2 extra weight if you're using like a misrecord or something. And there are better knives, of course, for damage, but sometimes you just need something a little quick. The crouch poke one-handed into the offhand dagger is a combo. Latency pending, I believe. And, of course, being able to hit people with a quick little dagger when they're expecting slow, methodical hits can do wonders. And that giant hunt didn't hit. But then it hit. So weird. So bizarre. I was kind of glad I was able to stack some magic defense before the fight. That's something you get when you're willing to swap talismans. Kind of a neat little utility. But I love landing the giant hunt. Oh my goodness. Popping people in the air. So much fun. It's great. And, you know, I like Lion's Claw. I like the damage it comes with. It's very tasty. It's very stylish. Very reminiscent of Artorias, the Abyss Walker. Who wouldn't want to LARP as Artorias the Abyss Walker? That's always a good time for those of us who have enjoyed previous Souls games. But Giant Hunt, I don't know, it feels slightly less telegraphed. It pops people into the air, and I believe it counts as piercing damage. Because, you know, you're thrusting with the weapon. Which means if you're running, of course, the Shard of Alexander, any Ash of War will do a little better. But if you're mostly getting counter hits with, say, the Crouch Poke, Giant Hunt might be a better option overall, because if you can hit people with a Giant Hunt in the middle of their attack, it does huge damage. Like we did to that host, and I'm able to go around, get a backstab, and while I'm getting this backstab, the poor host is finished off by that mob. The PvE did a wonderful job cleaning it up for me. But now's the time where we come to a close. Here is our final clip, a tasty 2v2. It's so fun seeing a 1v2 in the distance and running and knowing you can change the outcome of this fight. You can make it almost certain. And that's, I don't know, that's a neat little thing that you don't get in other games, to my knowledge. There's something about that just approach. Of course, you rarely get in other games an invader system, even though it's gotten more popular in recent years. It's not mainstream as far as I can tell. And there's some neat storytelling to that, where there's a host, his phantom, they're fighting a red, they're having a story, they're having a fight, and I show up and the whole dynamic changes. Things get real. I failed to clean up that backstab. That should have been a kill. And, you know, we're separated, and now that red over there, he has a far better time. He has a far better chance of doing well against his prey, so to speak. And me, I'm just trying to get some hits off on this guy. It was really hard to, and I was like, you know what? I've done a fair amount of greatswording. I want to clean up this kill if I can. So we make the swap to the starfist, and I flub switching to two-hand. But turns out, it still does great damage. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Starfist. It's very good. I love having a starfist or raptor claws or a Qatar, something quick and light to switch to. It's a good option. but to finish wrapping up this video, I want you to watch what the friendly Red Phantom is up to. Even though he's off screen, watch for any attacks that suddenly come into frame. It'll be very important as I say goodbye to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and make use of your new year. You deserve it. Bye-bye now.